Hey there, this is Dan. You're watching the Salty Sea, and I am here with the first of my two Bloodhunt guides. This is going to be for the Claws of Karanak, those corn-obsessed, dog-loving boys. Let's just get straight into it and look at the leader. The leader is the Pack Lord. Now, there's a lot to like here. He's pretty quick with that 5-inch move. That's very nice. Strength 5 also means that counter-based lists or just anything that's got a lot of fighters around there, just using their reactions a lot, they won't be able to punish you for having 5 attacks, which is always nice in a fighter with a lot of attacks. And really nice in this warband in particular. And now, is he good? I'll be honest, he's not very good, but he's not embarrassing either. So, like, if you compare to the Wrathmaster in Khorne, that's the Wrathmonger hero, similar utility, right? The Wrathmonger or Wrathmaster goes 4-inch move, but he's got the 2-inch range, so he's kind of getting around the board better than you'd think a 4-inch fighter does. Pretty comparable damage output, although it comes in a slightly different style. It's just that 5 points ends up buying them 5 more wounds than what you've got here for 205 points. That's tough. It's also tough because people generally, even though Wrathmasters are good, people generally aren't taking them because they're squeezed in between the Mighty Lord of Khorne at 215 points, which is just kind of giving you more stuff, or the Slaughter Priest at 195 points, which gives you also a decent fighter, but with an amazing ability. So the fact that it maybe compares unfavorably to a leader that people already aren't taking in Khorne is tough. Also, if you compare to a Heart Eater at 200 points, it's got the exact same stat line, but the Heart Eater is 5 points cheaper. So those are all tough beats to take for our beloved Pack Lord. But just because he's not like best in show doesn't mean that he's bad. As far as having a warband tax, you're not going to put your Pack Lord on the battlefield and think like, oh man, this guy's just so embarrassing. He's fine. He's just a little bit below average at his price point compared to what you can get in some other factions. Now, if we take a look at their abilities, there's a lot of really interesting stuff to get into here, interesting stuff to think about, and I love that. I love that Games Workshop keeps doing this with all of the new bespoke warbands. So let's take a look first. Blood for the Blood God. You've seen it before. A lot of factions have something like this. Fighter can only use this ability if an enemy fighter has been taken down by an attack action made by them this activation. This fighter makes a bonus move action or a bonus attack action. We know it. We know it's good. It's not very reliable, but we'll get to that in a little bit. It's, of course, much more abusable for ranged fighters, but we don't have any ranged fighters in this warband. That's okay. The doubles that I'm really interested in, Pack Hunters and Flaming Breath. And these give you an entire sort of build-around plan for the Claws of Karanak that I really, really like to see. So, Flaming Breath, roll a dice for each visible enemy fighter within 1 inch of this fighter. On a roll of 4, allocate 3 damage points to the fighter being rolled for. I'll get to where this is important in a second. Pack Hunters. Pick a visible enemy fighter within 6 inches of this fighter that has both the Claws of Karanak rune mark and the Agile rune mark, and is not activated yet this battle round. Now, just so you know, the Big Doggo Boy counts for that. So do the Blood Whelps, but we won't talk about them. You can activate that fighter immediately after this fighter's activation ends. This is cool. So what it gives you is, first things first, one of the big weaknesses of Blood for the Blood God is if you go after a fighter and you want to kill them, you can either be greedy and save your dice for Blood for the Blood God, assuming you'll kill them, and then you get to get your bonus action. But there's a lot of situations where fighters don't actually have a great chance of one-shot killing small, cheap fighters unless they spend their double to get Onslaught to do it. So there's this give and take where Blood for the Blood God, we haven't seen factions that lean on this ability really do all that well. And I think it's because the actual in-game usage of it is not that strong. Now here, you may want to, again, save your dice. You're probably not going to use Onslaught with this warband because they already have so many attacks in general. Here's their profiles. Lots of attacks generally. So you're generally not going to want to use Onslaught. So you're going to want to save your dice for Blood for the Blood God. But now, if you don't get the kill, you're not completely punished, because there's still a ability that you're really happy to do, which is Pack Hunters. Now you've failed to get the kill, you bring in Pack Hunters. If you have a friendly fighter within 6 inches, they come in, they either finish off the thing you failed to kill, or if you're feeling really fancy and you left the thing that you failed to kill on less than 3 health, you can actually have your Hound of Wrath attack. Say you run into a crowd of fighters, fail to kill one of them, you're sad about it, you bring in your Hound of Wrath. Your Hound of Wrath can decide whether you want to be greedy and just finish off the fighter with, say, 2 damage points left on it. Or you can Flaming Breath first, see if you get the kill there, and then you can attack something else, right? Because now it's a new activation, you can use your dice again. So there's a lot of flexibility here, a lot of in-game play that you don't normally have with Blood for the Blood God. Normally it's just a big dice roll, and you get just mega punished if you want to use Blood for the Blood God, but then things just don't work out that way. This way, you have a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of skill that you can kind of show in terms of how you decide to target prioritize with the way that these 3 abilities work out together. For example, let's say you do get the kill. Do you Blood for the Blood God to get another attack in or another move in? Or do you Pack Hunters to just keep the chain rolling to stop, to maybe try to get more kills that way, stop your opponent from responding in other ways? So there's a lot to really like here. There's a lot of skill that's going to be required with this warband, and that's really cool. I love that. Now let's get into the triples. The first one is Horrifying Trophies. A fighter can only use this ability if an enemy fighter has been taken down by an attack action made by them. This activation until the end of the battle round. Visible enemy fighters within 6 inches of this fighter cannot use abilities. This is going to be an incredible defensive spell against some warbands. It's going to be something that you just wish you didn't even have on your roster against many warbands. That's okay. This is, I guess, just a metagame thing for your local play group. Do people have really impactful abilities where they're not just using it? Like, because you create a bubble with Horrifying Trophies and you need to get the kill. But for this to be better than just using a double for Blood for the Blood God anyway, you need to know that your opponent is going to use the ability within the 6-inch bubble. They can't just leave and get the same amount of value on it. So it's very, very restricted how many warbands this is actually going to be good against. But when it's good, it's going to be very good. So that's great. Scent of Weakness has a lot of hoops here. A fighter can only use this ability if an enemy fighter has been taken down by an attack action made by them. Of course, this is the theme of the warband. Until the end of the battle round, add 1 to the attack's characteristic of melee attack actions made by visible friendly fighters while they are within 8 inches of this fighter. There's a lot of hoops here. Not just you have to secure a kill, but the +1 attack bubble, for it to really be worth it, you're going to have to get more attacks. You're going to have so many things in your bubble that you're getting more attacks from using this than you would from just attacking something else again with Blood for the Blood God, or maybe just the attacks you would get from it are higher impact. It's really, really tough. So this will occasionally be very good, but for the most part, you're not going to use it much. You're going to sometimes wish that you hadn't spent mental energy thinking about it. It's going to slow down your games. I'd say the best heuristic, honestly, is probably to forget about it. At the very least, I would rely on creating as many doubles as I can with this warband. Then if you roll a triple, just upgrade to a quad to have Rampage. You have multiple great Rampagers. The Pack Lord is a solid Rampager. The Hound of Wrath is a solid Rampager. So if you roll a natural triple, just put a wild dice down, make it a Rampage. If you don't roll a natural triple, use your wild dice to create more doubles as opposed to just going for triples. I'm not going to talk about the reaction because it's really bad. Here's the fighters in general, so not the leader. We've got basically 4 different profiles if you count the leader that I already talked about. You've got your Blood Whelps, 2 weapon options, your Brutalizers, 2 weapon options, and your Hound of Wrath. Now, let's talk a little bit about them. First of all, the Blood Whelps. The Claw Flail pays almost nothing for the extra range of 1-inch range. These 2 fighter profiles, 2-4-2-4 versus 3-4-1-3, are very similar in terms of the actual impact that they'll have in games. Don't give me the, well, but when you look at Onslaught, the Blood Whelp with the Barb Spear is much better. No, it's not, because you're never using Onslaught on these terrible 90-point fighters. They've both got the 12 inches of, 12 wounds, which is kind of the minimum that I'd want for something with only 90, or something that costs 90 points. The thing that I like about the 3-inch range that's better than 2 inches is you can cover an entire objective with 3-inch range if you're standing on the objective. You can't do that with 2-inch range, which is tough. Once you see it on the board, you'll realize that like the total area that is taken up, if you just do, basic formulas for the area of a circle, adding 1 inch to each bit of radius gives you marginally more than the previous inch did in terms of total area that you're covering. So it's not, basically they give you the same amount of points cost per inch of range that they charge you for, but each inch of range gives you more flexibility than the inch before that did, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So 3-inch range is very good. So I would only ever play the Claw Flail, never play the Spear. If I was getting 2 boxes of this, I would build a few spears to future-proof, because I wouldn't be surprised if in future editions 3-inch range things get nerfed a little bit, but I wouldn't do that if I were just building 1 box right now. Now let's get into Brutalizers, which are pretty interesting. So Shredder Blades, they don't have any relevant abilities. That's okay though, because they're the most efficient damage dealer in the warband. Their DPA 3 is pretty incredible. 6.67 is the average, but the modal outcomes are 6 and 8, and there's a 45% chance of hitting 8 or more. So this 4 attacks, 4 strength, 2-4 damage profile is something that a lot of support heroes around the 150, 160 point mark have, and it's usually pretty blah. It's like you're not upset about it, but you're not excited either when you see it. That profile is very different on a 120 point fighter. Dropping those 30 or 40 points for what you get is really nice, and this fighter will really just shred chaff models. I mean, 45% chance to spike 8 damage on a T3 model. Really incredible when you're only paying 120 points for the privilege to do so. Now, DPA 5, of course, you'll whiff a lot. 40% of the time, you'll either do 0 or 2 damage, which is essentially a whiff. So that's pretty tough. 4 is the most common outcome, though. So it's a very interesting fighter if you're going up against anything that's heavy S3. Really incredible against chaff, because so many of them are going to one-shot kill the chaff. But it's still pretty decent against anything with toughness 3. I don't know why I put S3 here. I meant T3, but it's pretty decent against anything with toughness 3. That's actually kind of the theme of the warband if you really look at their profiles. But the Brutalizer with Shredder Blades kind of emblemizes that more than anyone else. You also have the Shredder Blade and Meat Hook. I just don't think it's worth it. I gave kind of my skeptical face about it before, about how it's only good against some warbands. I would just say I would just avoid it. The one with the Shredder Blades is so much nicer. Now let's talk about the Hound of Wrath, because that's actually the really cool one. It's a pretty good fighter. It's fast. It puts out real damage. I mean, 5-4-2-4. I was just talking about how 4-4-2-4 is actually pretty respectable. This is a whole nother attack. The DPA 3 of 8.33, it'll deal 8 or more 66% of the time. That's really, really nice. Now the DPA 5 is 5, but it deals 4 or less 54% of the time, so most of the time it's not going to get up to that average. That's a little tough. Again, this warband really wants to be fighting against toughness 3. But this is a nice fighter. You're getting that 7 inches of movement. Now the only issue here, it's a lot like the Pack Lord. There are better versions of the same thing out there. If you compare this to a Skaven Doomflayer, you're just getting 1 extra strength at the exact same points cost. Now, are the abilities good enough to make up for that? They might be, right? So Skaven get that reaction where they can use their chaff models to protect their high impact models, right? They can give their people free disengages and moves and stuff like that. So they can use their reaction to protect the Doomflayer. You can't do anything like that in Claws of Karanak because your reaction is garbage. But Pack Hunters and Flaming Breath, like I said before, are very, very good abilities. So are they strong enough to bridge this gap to make the Hound of Wrath actually better than a Doomflayer? Which, by the way, Doomflayers are not really seeing a ton of play right now. But let's not worry about that. The question is really going to need to take a ton of play testing. I kind of lean towards no competitively, but yes casually, I would say. And so let's just get straight into a build with that. So I'm going to talk about the Pack Strikes First is what I'll call kind of this version of building with Claws of Karanak, right? So you've got a Pack Lord. You have to. Attacks, but not that bad attacks. The Pack Lord, like we said, if it were 10 points cheaper, you'd be like, wow, Pack Lord's amazing. 2 Hounds of Wrath, 3 Pack Whelps, and a Great Bray Shaman. So the plan here is to chain 3 activations together at the start of round probably 2 and 3 and get enough kills that the opponent can't really respond in a way that really punishes you. You're going to rely on the interplay between Pack Hunters and Blood for the Blood God, just using whichever one, attacking first and then asking questions later essentially, and using whichever one rewards you most given what the outcome was. And the nice thing about a Great Bray Shaman here, I know a lot of people really swear by that pull ability. What I like about it is activate your Bray Shaman last of everything in the round. It has the ability to kind of push your opponent around to set up a good combo next round with Pack Hunters or Blood for the Blood God, and that's why I've included it here. All of this together, this whole warband is built like this combo is completely backbreaking and game breaking. Now, I have questions about whether that's true. For example, you can spend 470 points, which is 2 Hounds of Wrath and a Pack Whelp. That's essentially when the combo is doing everything that that it says on the tin. That's how many points you're involving in it. That'll spread around 19 damage most of the time against T3 enemies. And they don't get to respond, which is really cool. But is that better than, say, bringing in a Fomeroid Crusher for 260 points and just having 12 to 16 damage against a Toughness 5 enemy? That's a little bit more debatable, whether it's worth it to just put all of these points into this basket to just get this combo off. Now, if you do get the combo off, I'm really interested to see how devastating it is for your opponent. You know, 19 damage can do a lot. You can often kill 2 fighters with something like that. So it's definitely worth doing. I think it'll be a lot of fun. The sort of storm combo of Warcry, if you'll pardon me a Magic the Gathering reference. I think that this is going to be a ton of fun. I don't think it's competitive, but there's a lot here to play with. And like I said in the abilities section, there's going to be a lot of skill that you get to kind of show in something like this. Do you want to be pack huntering a lot, getting the whole chain going, or do you want to be Blood for the Blood Godding, lose your chain, lose your initiative advantage, but then get a little bit more action economy? It's going to be up to you. It's going to take a lot of skill to decide which moments require which approach. I hope you have fun with it. I think it'll be cool when it works. Now, another way to build the warband is just, I hate chaff. You can just ignore that sort of playstyle in a can that they build for you, and you can go on the brutalizers based on their just general points efficiency. So a pack lord, 4 brutalizers, 2 pack whelps, and a blood reaper for 135 points. If you don't know, the blood reaper is the Khorne demon's sort of bloodletter hero. The plan here is you have enough bodies and speed that you can cover all the objectives, even in these newfangled Rumble Pack missions where there's a lot of objectives and they're spread all the way across the field. 8 models is normally a little light for those missions, but 8 models where everything has decent speed except for the Blood Reaper, which puts out a bajillion damage, that's going to make it a lot more doable. 6 of your fighters absolutely shred T3 chaff models. So the fear on Rumble Pack missions is that spamming tons of chaff models is just something that elite warbands just can't deal with at all, because they can't get on enough objectives to actually clear all these chaff models off of the objectives. And brutalizers and the Blood Reaper and the Pack Lord together are going to be able to shred chaff models off of objectives. They have that combination of bodies and DPA 3 that is going to be very, very effective against a lot of chaff spam warbands. And so that's kind of fun, and it's a very different way to play this, where you can opt out of the sort of ability combo that they've built for you. And if you like the brutalizer models, which I actually like them the best, even though I know most folks are over the moon for the Hound of Wrath. I like the Hound of Wrath a lot as well, but just as a model, I prefer both of the brutalizers. This will let you do that, and so that you don't have to just only build on the path that they tell you. Both of these builds require 2 boxes and an ally. I figure that's kind of the amount that is kind of reasonable. If your play group buys 2 boxes of this, and kind of mix and matches and trades around 6 to 8 people buying 2 boxes, this is a lot more doable for you to do. My final thoughts on the warband: there's a lot of positives here. Before I get negative, let me get into some cool positives. GW is just doing an incredible job at creating distinctive play styles for every bespoke team. That doesn't stop here. They have an incredibly distinctive, innovative playstyle, a really unexpected take on the Chaos Gods. Khorne's dog theme has always kind of been in the background, making it front and center. I don't think anybody predicted that, and I really like it. Now, a lot of people were looking for something with Khorne that wasn't just big muscle friends, and we didn't get that, right? Khorne is always going to be apparently the angry roid monsters of AOS. But this is a very different angle on that, and I like that a lot. There's also really solid internal balance. I think every fighter in this warband has something to say for it based on, compared to the other fighters. They've put out a few warbands lately that just had one fighter that was completely unplayable, or even a few fighters that were completely unplayable and then one amazing fighter. Stuff like that. You don't see any of that here, so everything is pretty comparable to each other, and I like that a lot. Also, again, Khorne is surprisingly fast. This is sort of something that keeps coming up with Khorne, and I really, really like it, where Khorne is not a speed warband, but they are just a little faster than you think they'll be, and these move 5 heavy hitting fighters are going to be really nice that way. Now, competitively, there are a lot of negatives here. A lot of my positives are, aesthetic positives, or just kind of general philosophical positives. And I think that there's so much to like generally with this warband. This is a warband that I'm going to be excited to own, to hold on to for future editions, really. Because competitively right now, they have a major T4 problem with toughness 4, essentially. Their warband really, really starts to break down. I don't know how you ever beat Stormcast with a warband like this. Even though they have strength 4, they also still kind of break down against toughness 4, because they get absolutely shredded by, say, a bunch of plague bearers are just going to be able to counter them right off the board because that reaction is so devastating to them. And a warband that's actually built to use counter, so something like Ossiarch Bone Reapers, something like certain builds of Iron Golems, this warband is going to just bounce right off them. And something that you could do in those situations is run 2 Pack Lords. Pack Lords also deal pretty well with any Stormcast that aren't wearing a shield or are the Paladins. The problem with running 2 Pack Lords is then are you kind of just a worse Untamed Beasts at that point? I kind of think you are. I would rather run Untamed Beasts with 2 Heart Eaters than Claws of Karanak with 2 Pack Lords. So that's kind of tough. They also don't have any chaff. Their cheapest models are 90 points. And that's also tough because their 90-point models kind of have stat lines that remind me of 75-point models, which is rough. I just think this whole warband is just paying a lot of points for the abilities. And I think the abilities are good, don't get me wrong. But I'm very skeptical that they're game-breaking enough to justify the very, very high points costs of these fighters. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. Maybe in the hands of incredibly skilled players, this will be a really dangerous warband. I really, really hope that that's true. I am skeptical, so I hate to end on a negative note, especially for a warband that I will be painting up. I am incredibly excited for the way that these guys line up with my Khorne Demons. The way my Khorne Demons, the painting scheme is going to work on these guys. I'm just excited for all of it, but competitively they're not in a great place. Now, casually, I do think that this build of using all these Pack Hunters abilities and using that kind of symphony of doubles, casually, I think that this warband is going to be incredible. Just don't be upset if you take them to a tournament and don't win the tournament. I don't think that that's going to be in the cards for a warband like this, but they are going to be really sweet. So with that, I'll be putting out some battle reports and some guides to the other pretty new content that we've had in Warcry pretty soon. So until then, may all your rolls be crits, not hits. Be critting always.